Imagine building a life that finally feels like yours. You have a steady acting role on a successful legal drama, a lifestyle site where you write in your own voice, and a slowly growing platform around women, career, and empowerment. Then, in a few short years, you leave the job you love, you shut down the project that carries your name, and you move across an ocean into an institution that controls almost every public word you say. That is the part of Meghan Markle's story that often gets flattened into a simple fairy tale or a simple disaster. Today, we are going to slow down and ask a different question. What did she actually give up to marry Prince Harry, and what has the cost of that choice really been? Welcome to Royally Misrepresented, the space where we put emotion to one side for a moment and let facts, timelines, and lived context take the lead. In this episode, we are going to walk through three big areas of Meghan Markle's life: the work and public voice she built before she met Harry, the loss of privacy and mental health impact that followed their relationship becoming global news, and the personal and family consequences of entering and then stepping away from the royal system. We'll end by looking at where she and Harry stand now, with their projects like As Ever and Archewell Philanthropies, and what that tells us about how they are trying to rebuild on their own terms. The aim is not to argue that she has suffered more than anyone else, or that every choice was perfect. It is to offer a clear, grounded look at what was actually on the table when she chose this relationship and what that decision demanded of her. Why does any of this matter beyond celebrity curiosity? First, it matters because it is a real example of something many people wrestle with at a smaller scale. How much of your own life do you reshape for a relationship, particularly when the other person's world comes with heavy expectations? Second, it matters because the pressures around Meghan were not just personal. They were intensified by race, gender, and class, and by a media environment that can turn a woman from new arrival to national lightning rod in a very short time. Third, it matters because we often talk about royal stories as if the only stakes are titles and status. Yet in Meghan Markle's own words, during the 2021 interview with Oprah, the pressure and lack of support became so severe that she reached a point where she didn't want to be alive anymore. So this is not just about glamour or gossip, it's about work, identity, mental health, and what happens when a private relationship collides with public power. First, let's look at the life she built before Harry. Before royal titles were part of the story, Meghan Markle had already built a career and a voice. She worked for years as an actor and eventually became widely recognized as Rachel Zane on the legal drama Suits, appearing for 7 seasons as part of the main cast. Alongside that, she launched a lifestyle site called The Tig in 2014. It was a place where she wrote about food, travel, fashion, and interviews with women she admired, and where she also published personal essays about ambition and identity. The Tig grew into a small but influential brand in its own right. It connected her with an audience who knew her not just as a character on screen, but as a writer and curator with her own taste and opinions. She also began taking on more visible humanitarian work, including speaking about gender equality and representation on international stages. So when people say she gave things up to marry into the royal family, that is what they're talking about: a steady television role, a developing media and lifestyle platform, and an emerging public identity that she had built largely on her own terms. In 2017, as her relationship with Harry became more serious, the Tig closed with a farewell message to readers. The official explanation at the time was that she wanted to focus on acting and charity work, but later interviews make it clear that becoming a royal partner meant that continuing the site was not really an option. Not long after that, she left Suits ahead of her wedding. For some people, that looks like a trade-up, a television career exchanged for royal status. For others, it looks like the opposite: a woman leaving work she loves and a platform she owns to enter a system where her role is defined for her. Both readings miss something simple. Either way, it was a real sacrifice of a life she had shaped for herself. Next, the loss of privacy and the impact on mental health. Public figures accept a certain loss of privacy, but what happened once Meghan and Harry went public as a couple went far beyond normal curiosity. From the earliest stages of the relationship, newspapers and online outlets dug through her past friendships, family, and even the neighborhoods linked to her life. One early headline described her background in terms that Harry later called out for racial undertones and for feeding a wider pattern of harassment by the time of their wedding. She was under intense scrutiny not only from traditional media but from social media networks, where criticism of her often blended racism and misogyny. This environment didn't stop once she was a duchess. It intensified. In 2021, during the interview with Oprah, Meghan described what that period felt like from inside. She said the constant negative coverage and the sense that she was not being protected by the institution led to a very real mental health crisis. The line that many people remember is her saying that she just didn't want to be alive anymore and that this thought was constant and frightening. She recalled asking for professional help and being told that seeking treatment would not look good for the institution and that she didn't fit within existing support systems because she was not a paid staff member. People can and do argue about how different sides remember those conversations inside the palace, but the piece that's not really in dispute is this: the level of pressure combined with feeling trapped and exposed pushed her into a serious mental health crisis during pregnancy. When we talk about sacrifice in this context, it's not just a loss of private space. It is the psychological cost of having millions of strangers debating the value of your existence while the system you have joined feels unable or unwilling to respond in a way that makes you feel safe. The next area of sacrifice is one that sits at the intersection of family loyalty and public attention: her relationship with her father. In the months before the royal wedding in 2018, Thomas Markle agreed to pose for staged photographs with a picture agency, which were presented as candid moments of him preparing for the wedding. He later acknowledged this, and the episode led to a cascade of interviews and leaked communications that deeply damaged trust between him and his daughter. After the wedding, Meghan wrote a long letter to him, which later became central to a legal case when a newspaper published large parts of it without permission, but the emotional reality was already stark by that point. She described the breaking of that relationship in painful terms in the Oprah interview, saying that she felt she had lost her father. In late 2025, his health again forced their story back into public view. When reports emerged that Thomas Markle had undergone a life-saving operation to amputate part of his leg in the Philippines, his son spoke to media outlets describing the surgery as a case of life or death and discussing his father's condition in detail. Shortly afterwards, a spokesperson for Meghan confirmed that she had reached out to her father following the news of the surgery, and later reports said that a written message from her had reached him in hospital. The important point here is not to sit in judgment over who is right. It is to recognize that entering the royal spotlight magnified every fault line in that relationship. A woman who already had a complicated family history found that every private conflict with her father, siblings, and extended relatives could be turned into a headline and then into a permanent digital record. Part of what she has given up is the ability to process family pain quietly. The worst days between parent and child have become international stories. Beyond career, privacy, and family, there is the broader question of what it meant to enter and then step away from the royal system itself. Becoming a senior working royal meant that Meghan moved into a role defined by tradition, protocol, and public expectation. Many of the choices that had once been personal clothes, projects, speeches now had to pass through layers of advisors and approval. Media coverage often framed harmless personal preferences as rule-breaking moments. Something as small as holding Harry's hand at an event or choosing a slightly different style of dress could be presented as challenging protocol, even when there was no formal rule in question. At the same time, her working life shifted from acting and writing to official engagements, charity visits, and patronages, all of which were monitored and interpreted through the lens of royal politics. By early 2020, she and Harry decided they could not continue in that structure. They announced that they would step back from senior royal duties, seek financial independence, and split their time between the United Kingdom and North America. In practice, the split did not stay balanced. They settled in California, and over time their work moved further away from royal duties toward independent media and philanthropic projects. What they gave up in that moment was not only status, but also the institutional backing that comes with it. Official support staff. What they gave up in that moment was not only status, but also the institutional backing that comes with it. Official support staff, defined roles within the royal ecosystem, and the expectation of public funding for travel security and other costs. What they gained was more freedom and more responsibility. If things went well, it would be on their own merits. If things went badly, there would be no palace to absorb the shock. Since leaving their working royal roles, Harry and Meghan have tried to build a life that combines commercial work and philanthropy. Meghan has returned to lifestyle content through her company. As ever, a rebranding of the project first announced under the name American Riviera Orchard. As ever, a rebranding of the project first announced under the name American Riviera Orchard. The newer name has been framed as giving her more room to create products linked to food, entertaining, and home that reflect her taste and daily life. Alongside this, the couple have continued to develop film and audio projects through their production work and have tried to align those with the values they say matter most to them. On the philanthropic side, they recently announced that their Archewell Foundation is being restructured and renamed Archewell Philanthropies, moving to a different model that uses a fiscal sponsor to handle administration while they focus on strategy and partnerships. These changes have drawn scrutiny. The foundation's financial filings show years where spending outpaces new donations, and recent reporting focuses on staff reductions as part of the new model. But they also show ongoing grants to projects on digital safety, community support, and international relief. In other words, the new life is not a simple escape. It is a demanding mix of business risk, public expectations, and continued media interest. If you look back across the timeline, a pattern appears. Meghan gave up a steady creative career and a personal platform to enter a royal world that offered status but little control. She gave up privacy and, in her own account, paid with her mental health. Her relationship with her father fractured under the weight of global attention and remains fragile even as serious illness brings new attempts at contact. She and Harry ultimately gave up the structure of formal royal life to build something of their own, knowing that they would carry both the benefits and the blame personally. Whether you admire those choices, criticize them, or feel a bit of both, the sacrifices are real. They are not abstract. They sit in work, friendships, family, and health. When you look at Meghan Markle's journey, she has made big sacrifices. The career she left behind, the privacy she lost, the family relationships that changed, and the decision to step away from royal life with Harry. I would love to know how you see it in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you find value in slow, careful breakdowns like this, you can support Royally Misrepresented by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing. It helps our channel to grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.